Good evening, everybody. We're back. Today, we're going to be switching up a little bit. So, last time I made a Rangers trade hypothetical video, I was going over likely candidates for the Rangers to acquire. Whereas in this video, I'm going to be kind of looking at some under-the-radar, more kind of stretch assets. Guys, the Rangers could go after, but likely will not acquire. So, the reason for this video, it's kind of inspired from a little bit what I've been seeing on Twitter, specifically from the Dave Shapiro account. Just kind of throwing some hypothetical names out there that, the Rangers very well might be interested in or could be interested in. As we know, Chris Drury is pretty business gets done behind closed doors type guy. He has not given us much information to work with. We don't know if the Rangers are buyers to the deadline. We don't know if they're going to take on a shitty contract as suggested by Hockey Statminer, which, who knows? The Rangers have a shitload of cap space going to this trade deadline. If they really want to play garbage man and get futures or whatever the hell for crappy contracts, we very well could do that. Do I think we should? Probably not. I'd rather see us try to contend, but I don't know. Honestly, a really big reason for this video, and I'll zoom out so you guys can see a little bit. I am not, and I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of acquiring rentals. Now, I think if you're this season against a cap team and your window's closing, go after rentals, give it a shot. I, for one, am not a huge fan of them because the payoff in the last 10, 15 years for rentals for the Rangers has not worked out very well. However, players that they've acquired with term have worked out pretty well. If you look at the Derek Brassard trade for Mika's manager, we traded Brassard for a term guy. I'm sorry, that's a bad comparison because that's just a lucky deal. Let's go the other way. Martin St. Louis. We got a year and a half out of Marty St. Louis. We got a cup run, and we got a conference final run. We traded Keith Yandle. He had a Eastern Conference final run, and then he just played. The Rangers kind of sucked that season. It sucks. We ended up trading for Eric Salt at that deadline. The team sucked, but Yandle had a really good second season. I don't know, and I feel like the assets we gave him were equal to that of what some teams were giving up for rentals and only getting 18 regular season games and maybe 10 playoff games out of them. I am of the belief. It's been a while since I made a video. I am of the belief right now. I also just got out of school. I've been in school since noon. Okay, it's been a long day. I'm of the belief that the Rangers should be going for players that can last more than a year because the assets we're giving up are more and more valuable. So we should be learning from the mistakes of Rangers past. In 1994, it worked. The Rangers traded away a lot of really good futures for a win-now team. Granted, that team was a win-now team. This Rangers team is young enough and has enough term on their young guys where we don't necessarily need to win right now. We kind of have a wide-open window, and we could win for a number of years. And moving, what we have shitloads of assets in the minor. Moving what assets we have in the minors and coming up to facilitate deals that could benefit us in the long term instead of just, a cup of coffee, I think it's possible. I think we could do it. I think we should do it. At the very least, investigate it. So I won't get into too much more. I'm sorry, I'm kind of sleep talking right now. I'm a little bit tired, but I really wanted to get this video out for you guys because it's been a while since I made one, and I'm very excited about this video. I want to talk about these potential guys we could acquire because it's just exciting. Trade deadline season's upon us. The Rangers, for the first time, God, since the Eric Staal days. What was the year after that? When we lost to the Hurricanes, that was embarrassing. So I'm not even talking about that year. Years before that. So first time in a long time, the Rangers are contenders. We're towards the top of a division, and we're fighting for a top spot in the playoffs. We're not fighting for the playoffs. We're fighting for a top spot in the playoffs. That is huge. We haven't done this as Ranger fans in a while. So I'm excited. There's hype going into the deadline. Instead of being sellers, we're buyers. I'm ready to go. I'm hyped. Let's jump right into it. So a lot of names going to be in this video. So just pay attention and enjoy the ride. So the first player we're going to look at is Clayton Keller. So why would the Rangers acquire Clayton Keller? He's another winger. We don't need another winger. Well, we don't need one, but he also shares a birthday with me. So I'm just kidding. That's not the reason I want him. But he does share a birthday with me. He's 1 year older than I am. Clayton Keller, why would he be good on the New York Rangers? Okay, number one, he's got 7 years left on his contract, so you get a little bit of term with a 23-year-old player. Number two, the Rangers wanted Clayton Keller in the past. They tried to facilitate a trade to move up in the draft for Clayton Keller's draft to pick him, I think, at 4th or 5th overall. They tried to make it work, didn't happen, but clearly Rangers brass was interested in him at one point. I believe in 2016, The team had just been passed over to from Glenn Sather to Jeff Gorton. I believe that's when it happened. Regardless, there's a history between the Rangers and Keller. The Rangers were interested in him at one point. He could be available on the Arizona Coyotes. We don't know what direction they're trending in. But regardless, his name's out there. So, let's take a look at Clayton Keller as a player, not his contract. We know he's got 7 years left. $7.15 million per year is his cap hit. Let's see what he's done in his... Why is my computer just freeze? Okay. Clayton Keller. 39 points in 47 games for a piss-poor Arizona Coyotes team. Not bad. And he's only a -8. Kind of impressive. 35 and 56 the year before. 44 and 70 the year before that. 47 and 82 the year before that. 65 and 82 as a rookie. Not bad. What's happened to Clayton Keller since, aside from the Arizona Coyotes sucking? Well, the Arizona Coyotes have sucked. So here's a fun stat about Clayton Keller I think everyone can get behind. So despite Clayton Keller being on a team that cannot generate offense, every single year, aside from his rookie year, Clayton Keller has had a positive Corsi. Meaning that his team is controlling the puck more times than not when he is on the ice. That's pretty defining of a player that's playing on a real ass team. Especially a Coyotes team last year that was historically bad. And this year, historically bad. And he had a Corsi of almost 60%. That's a pretty damn high number. When you switch it to just 5-on-5, because obviously this accounts for power play, which those are going to be inflated. Even just 5-on-5. Pretty damn close. Some examples over. 50% of the time, the team is controlling the puck when he is on the ice. The Rangers, late in games, lately, have been struggling with possessing the puck and giving up the puck and turning it over. And teams scoring on his late and the Rangers not being able to put in a full 60 minutes. You get a guy like Clayton Keller who's pretty damn good at possessing the puck. Who could very well fix the void left by Pavel Buchnevich. Or fill the void left by Jesper Foss on the second line. And then here you go. Now you have an elite winger to sit next to Ryan Strome and Artemi Panarin. Clayton Keller, despite his numbers, his blatant outright numbers not showing it, is an elite hockey player. He's a damn good player. And right now, you could potentially be buying low on him strictly because he has not lived up points-wise what he produced in his rookie season. And he has 7 years left at over $7 million a year. This is a franchise that just agreed to a multi-year deal to play hockey in a stadium that is only seating 5,000 people a night. And that is if they sell out. Basically, the Arizona Coyotes don't have much money to work with. And I'm sure if they can get rid of $7 million per year, when they're about to enter into like the darkest part of a rebuild, they'd be quite all right doing it. But how does Clayton Keller's value compare historically to players that have been moved in a similar situation? So, we're going to look at the Phil Kessel trade. We're not going to look at this one. Phil Kessel was 21 years old, coming off his entry-level deal in this trade. We're going to be looking at this Phil Kessel trade. Back in July 1st, 2015, 7 years ago, Phil Kessel was 27 years old, a little bit older than Clayton Keller, so I don't really understand how this situation matches up. Well, like Clayton Keller, Phil Kessel had 7 years left on his contract, and the Toronto Maple Leafs were entering a rebuild. They needed to move Phil Kessel to just accrue some young assets. They retained 15% of Kessel's contract with 7 years remaining to move him to Pittsburgh Penguins for Kasperi Kapanen, first-round pick, and third-round pick. Nick Spaulding and Scott Harrington were C+, B- prospects. Not really going to talk about them very much, but Phil Kessel, to that point, was an elite hockey player. So his value was light years higher than Clayton Keller's in terms of if you want a player for one game, you were going to choose Kessel in 2014 versus Keller today. However, what Kessel gives up in age, being 27, not 23, that's how Keller makes up for it. That's what Keller makes up for in value, right? So, contracts, virtually the same. Production, you give it to Kessel. Age, you give it to Keller. Now you're kind of starting to see how the value is evening itself out. Kessel had the production. Keller has the 4 years in age here. So that value kind of evens out. You probably still give the nod to Kessel. Actually, you definitely still give the nod to Kessel. And now you're at an impasse. Now this is where we can draw comparisons to trade value. So let's take a look. Pittsburgh Penguins, like the Rangers, were a contender at that point. The Pittsburgh Penguins more so. So we'll say this first-round pick from the Pittsburgh Penguins will give the benefit of the doubt. The first-round pick from the Rangers definitely has more value than the Penguins' first-round pick. Same thing with the third-round pick. Nick Spoling in 2015. Again, this is 7 years ago. So Nick Spoling was 25 at the time. He had NHL games under his belt. Let's compare him to a Julien Gauthier. After Nick Spoling, you have Scott Harrington. Scott Harrington was a second-round pick 4 years prior to the trade. Had NHL games under his belt, was not highly touted by any means, was just a defensive NHL prospect. Again, B- potential. Nothing crazy, but a good hockey player. How would this compare to a New York Rangers trade to the Arizona Coyotes? So, if we were going to trade with the Coyotes, in terms of just raw value, we're looking... I'm sorry, I think my dog just knocked on my door. Come on, Koki, come on. You can come too, Canal. All right, well, now I've got 2 dogs. All right, girls, all right. Welcome to my abode. Come and say hi? All right. Okay, anyways, without further interruption, Clayton Keller. So, where the hell is he? Clayton Keller. Okay, I did the math before the video started. If they retained 15% of his contract the same way that Toronto retained on Kessel, it would be 1,150,123. So, $1.15 million works out perfectly. All right, brings him down to a $6 million a year player. Still expensive, $6 million a year, but if you're getting an elite player out of it, what the hell do you care? If this is the Rangers team we have today, if we're fully healthy, right? Everyone comes off IR, everyone's on the lineup. This is what we have to work with, okay? If we look at the... actually, hold on. I was going to pull up a cap-friendly of the Arizona Coyotes roster so we could see what their organizational needs are. Teams, Arizona Coyotes. Okay. Organizationally speaking, it's hard to look at their NHL roster because a lot of these guys will not be back next year. It's funny that Phil Kessel's on that team, and this is the comparison I'm using, but still. In the system, I think they really only have Dylan Guenther. Yeah, I mean, Liam Kirk's not bad, but 22 years old. You know, Dylan Gauthier, Guenther. Oh my God, Dylan Guenther is their guy. He's their future. Defensively, they have Victor Soderstrom coming up. Nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy. At this point in time, the Arizona Coyotes, their cupboards today are not well stocked with elite talent. Now, this year, considering the fact that they're going to have a top 5 pick in their own, and probably a top 5 pick in Montreal's, because if you look at the fine print, the better of Montreal and Carolina's 2022 first-round pick. But if either or both are... Oh, hold on, never mind. So never mind, they'll get Carolina's first-round pick. So they'll have a top 5 pick and 2 late 20 picks. Coyotes need help. They need system help. They need forwards, they need defensemen, and they need goalies. They have no goaltenders. Where the hell is their... Boom. 25, 29, 22. They don't really got much going on over there. Not bad, but they don't have like any guys that are like, wow, they got that goalie prospect. So first things first. You probably could trade a goalie prospect. If I'm the Rangers, I either throw Dylan Garland or Alexander Georgiev in their face. I think Garand has more value than Georgiev at this juncture, but I bet you the Rangers want to trade Alexander Georgiev more. The question is, how do the Arizona Coyotes value him when they already have Vejmelka, Wedgwood, and Provistev? Well, they probably only really care about Vejmelka considering the fact that Wedgwood was picked up off of waivers. Georgiev is a year older than Vejmelka, but he has more NHL experience. So let's just throw Georgiev in there. We'll call his value equal to that of Scott Harrington in the Phil Kessel trade. Rough, but kind of makes sense, okay? So, we covered this part. Nick Spoling, Julien Gauthier, a young, serviceable NHL player who hasn't really broken out yet, but very well could. Okay, we covered the small pieces. Now, you throw in your first-round pick. This is looking like a pretty good trade. Well, we kind of forgot about one piece. Kasperi Kapanen. In 2015, Kasperi Kapanen was a year after he was drafted. Pretty damn good numbers for a young guy playing in the Liga. So, how do we draw Kapanen numbers? Who in the Rangers system does Kasperi Kapanen kind of compare to? I hate to say it, but it's pretty close to Brennan Ottman. I don't know, nor do I think the Rangers want to part ways with Brennan Ottman. So you could go the route of, well, maybe the Coyotes would be interested in possibly a defensive prospect, considering they really don't have very many of those. As we just saw, Jacob Chychrun, as we've heard, is on the move from the Coyotes. 23 years old. Let's pretend they're going to keep him. They got him, Jonas Moser, who's C-level defenseman. They got Victor Soderstrom, and that's kind of where that ends. They don't have much in the way of defense. Well, as it turns out, the Rangers have a gluttony of defense. So if you take Kasperi Kapanen's value, probably pretty close to the value of Nils Lundkvist. Now you're looking at a B-level goaltender, potentially B-level goaltender, a C+, B- forward, potentially an A-level prospect, and a first-round pick for Clayton Keller. If you're the Arizona Coyotes, you probably consider this deal. You might not be like jumping on like, you know what, let's do this 100%, I'm in. You definitely consider it. I think the Coyotes, personally, if I was running them, I would tell them to take Georgiev and shove it up your hoop. I want Dylan Garand. But in terms of raw value and just for the sake of this hypothetical, I think Georgiev is a little bit more valuable than Garand if you're just looking at the Phil Kessel trade as a comparison. For the Rangers, you're giving up 4 assets for 1. It works this year, but it probably spells the end of Ryan Strome, and the winger core gets a little bit crowded. You end up having to move one of Kreider, Panarin, Lafreniere, or Kakko. Kakko ends up probably being the odd man out here. But regardless, for this year, you stack up that that winger core pretty damn good. I think you slot in Clayton Keller right here. You bump down Kakko into Julien Gauthier's spot. You call up Keith Kincaid. He backs up Igor Shesterkin. And nothing really changes. The only thing you're out of is a first-round pick. You replace Gauthier with Keller. That's a huge plus. Lundkvist isn't on the roster. The first-round pick isn't on the roster. And Georgiev replaced with Kincaid. Today, that's a huge deal for the Rangers. For the next 7 years at $6 million, Keller's contract could become an issue, but at the very least, you have a player on a relatively reasonable cap hit who could produce big numbers when Artemi Panarin inflate his value. He's movable. At the end of the day, that's all that matters for the New York Rangers. Would I love this trade for the Rangers? Yes. Do I think it happens? Probably not. So we're going to go ahead and clear this trade out. But that is hypothetical trade number 1. You guys comment below your thoughts. I want to hear your guys' thoughts and feedback on all of these things. Potential acquisition number 2. Roope Hintz. This is a very big reach. I freaking love Roope Hintz. The kid is an animal. Okay? Roope Hintz, 39 points in 42 this year, 43 and 41 the year before, 33 and 6 the year before that. He's just been freaking awesome. The only thing he doesn't do consistently is win faceoffs, and even then he's 50-50. All right, who gives a shit about that? He's a good hockey player. If the Rangers pick him up, he's probably playing on this. You're going to notice a lot of these guys are going to slot in on that Panarin line. A fun fact about Roope Hintz, his possession numbers are pretty damn good. Even 5-on-5. His possession numbers are pretty damn good. He'd slot in well in this Rangers team. But what is the inspiration behind the Dallas Stars trading a young 25-year-old player? Why the hell would they do that? Well, there's not really one. Aside from the fact they're not competing in the playoffs this year and they could try to maximize on his value, there's not really much incentive to do so. So there's not really much incentive for them to do so, to trade him. So you'd have to do a little bit of convincing. So the trade comparison I got for Roope Hintz is that of Matt Duchene. And the reason I choose this is because of what Colorado got for Matt Duchene. Colorado didn't need to trade Matt Duchene. Matt Duchene just wanted to be traded. And I'm not saying this is the case about Roope Hintz. I'm not talking about this. I'm not calling Matt Duchene Roope Hintz or vice versa. However, in value, they're pretty similar. Both had about 1.5 years left on their contract. Didn't need to be traded, but quote-unquote were traded. And quote-unquote goes on the Roope Hintz part because he's not really rumored to be moved. Here's what Colorado got back. A replacement center in Kyle Turris. Andrew Hammond, a backup goalie. Shane Bowers, we'll call him a B-level prospect, right? 27th overall the year before. We'll call him a B-level prospect. A conditional first-round pick and a third-round pick. The condition was just either you get it in 2019 or 2020 or something like that. This ended up being something weird. If you're going to put this in Rangers terms, for Rupe Hintz, just straight value, because the Dallas Stars obviously want to compete. If they're moving Rupe Hintz, they're going to want to accrue more than just it's gonna be picks and prospects. No, they still want to win and compete. If you're making this move for Rupe Hintz, you're calling Dallas. Another comparison for this would have been the Zibanejad Brassard trade, but I just don't think the Rangers have a Brassard type asset right now with multiple years left. So I went with this one instead. Rupe Hintz. 2 years left, a year and a half left. Filipino is the start. He's kind of your Kyle Turris. He's less than Matt Duchene, but still serviceable. Obviously, your first-round pick. What else? You're missing your B-level prospect. We're talking about the Dallas Stars. If we look at their system, John Klingberg's on the way out. They don't really have, aside from Heiskanen, do they have young defensive prospects? They got Harley. So your B-level prospect probably ends up being Matthew Robertson. And you kind of go from there. Hedel, a first, Robertson. I don't think that gets the deal done. I think you probably have to throw in another minor asset to kind of just push Dallas over the edge. Be like, you know what? Let's make the deal. The only thing holding back Rupe Hintz's value even a little bit, why does this keep happening? Come on. There we go. Is he has had some health issues. Some. Nothing crazy, but he's had health issues. He's never played a full season yet. Regardless, still a very valuable player. Will be a great fit on the New York Rangers. I think, honestly, you probably end up having to throw in... Let's call Turris more valuable than Hedel. Robertson and Bowers, kind of similar in value. Maybe you give the nod to Bowers. A first-round pick. Ottawa was a cup contender at the time, so you give the nod and first-round pick value to the Rangers. You probably throw in a second-round pick on top of it. So you probably say the better of the Rangers or Blues second-round pick, so conditional second-round pick. I think that's a good deal. If I'm the Rangers, I jump all over that. If I'm the Dallas Stars, I think about it. The Dallas Stars do not have very stocked cupboards. They don't have a great prospect system. This definitely helps it. Two top 60 picks potentially, and one of the better drafts we've seen in a while. You get a good prospect in Matthew Robertson, and you get Filipino, who could be a serviceable third-line center or top 6 winger if they want to push him up there. I think it's a good deal for both sides, and I think it's something the Rangers could and should pursue. I think Hintz would be great on this team. The guy works his bag off. He plays super hard. He skates super fast. He's got a good shot. He's got good hands. He just does everything well. I think he'd fit in awesome with the New York Rangers. And that's kind of all I got to say about that. You guys let me know what you think about the Rupe Hintz potential trade. Moving on from Rupe Hintz and the Dallas Stars, we're going to take a venture over to the Ottawa Senators and Connor Brown. Connor Brown's an interesting little player. 28 games this season. He's got 22 points, 35 the year before, 21 goals, not bad. 43 and 71, 29 and 82, not great. And his Leafs numbers weren't great. But the thing I like about Connor Brown is his shorthanded numbers. His shorthanded points. I don't see shorthanded goals. Here we go. 5 shorthanded goals last year. It's a lot for a pretty crappy team. Good defensive player. He's just good all over the place. I think he'd slot in well on that Artemi Panarin line. You kind of see how it's all going back. His cap hit is $3.6 million. I believe it is like that for this year and next year. It is. So you get a year and a half out of him before he hits UFA. Slots in perfect between Strome and Panarin. And at $3.6 million, you could potentially get the Ottawa Senators to eat half of that. And it makes it so you could probably still re-sign Ryan Strome. You're not breaking the bank here. This is a reasonable acquisition. A good hockey player. Would fit in great with the Rangers. If you look at his possession numbers... Where is he? Corsi below 50%, 5-on-5. Actually, somehow better. Probably because he spends a lot of time on the PK. This guy's not going to make or break a team. He's definitely he's going to help you win. And at 2 years left, at $3.6 million, why not? Why not take a chance? The player I compare him to is Blake Coleman, and the acquisition that the Tampa Bay Lightning made by getting him 2 years ago. So let's just say they go for him, yada, yada, yada. Where the hell is he? Connor Brown. Let's pretend they eat half of his contract. $1.8 million. They give up a first-round pick and a B prospect for him, so that would be like a first-round pick. And again, we'll use Matthew Robertson as an example. I'm not sure if the Ottawa Senators need defensive prospects, but it would be like a Brett Berard or a Matt Robertson level prospect. For Connor Brown, a year and a half at $1.8 million. Again, a guy who can kill penalties. He plays well 5-on-5. He's had multiple 20. He's 2-time 20 goal scorer, I believe. You put him on a line with Artemi Panarin. Who knows what happens? I think he'd fit in really well with the New York Rangers. I think he'd be a breath of fresh air into that top six. And you know what? If he doesn't work well on that Panarin line, well, then you have a really good third-line winger. And if he doesn't fit in over there as well, in the offseason, you have a top six forward making $1.8 million a year. You could easily flip him. You might not get the first-round pick and B-level prospect value out of him, but at the very least, you can flip him. Honestly, I don't even think you have to give up a first-round pick for Connor Brown. I bet you it's more like a second and a B-level prospect. Even with the salary retention, I don't think you have to part ways with a first-round pick to get him. That's kind of all I'm saying. I just don't think it happens. But at the very least, you throw it in there. You're giving the benefit of the doubt to the team that's trading a player, not the team that's acquiring. Moving on to the Seattle Kraken and Jared McCann. I've been high on Jared McCann ever since the Pittsburgh Penguins picked him up, and I got to see what this kid really can skate like. He freaking moves. He's been given a pretty big role this year in Seattle, and he's definitely filled that role well. 19 goals, 30 points in 42 games. He showed flashes of brilliance last year and the year before. Jared McCann skates his bag off. He's got good hands. He's got a good shot. Again, a guy that you might not want carrying a line, unless you're just a really shitty team and you don't care. But for a playoff team, could really plug a hole on that Artemi Panarin line. Again, going back to the Artemi Panarin line, this guy could fit in pretty damn well, and I think he's someone that the Rangers should consider acquiring. He's probably someone that could be had for relatively cheap. If you look at the Seattle Kraken team right now, they're definitely in sell mode. They're not winning anything. Jared McCann is going to be an RFA this year with arbitration rights. They've got good young centers ahead of and behind them. Wenberg's got 3 years left. Yanni Gourde's got 4 years left. They drafted Beniers, who's coming up, who could be here just as soon as next year. They got Morgan Geekie, they got Ryan Donato, Riley Sheahan, Mace. They got plenty of centers. They can spare one. And if they're rebuilding, why not try to get assets for him? If I was going to compare Jared McCann, also, where's his, show his fancy stats really quick, just the possession numbers. Corsi, 58.5% this year, last year. The year before that, he's still over 50. Not great these years, but young guy coming into the league. That's big. 5-on-5, positive as well. I'm big on Jared McCann. I think he'd be freaking awesome. I compare him to David Perron in 2013. In 2013, David Perron was 24 years old. I believe he was going into an arbitration year. He was traded from the Blues with a third-round pick to the Oilers for Magnus Paajarvi, a second, and a fourth. Magnus Paajarvi back in 2013 was 22 years old. Had a cup of coffee in the NHL, a really good rookie year, and kind of didn't do shit after that, and then just got moved for David Perron. At that point, he had completely fallen apart. He really had no value. Not really much you could do with that. Good minor league player, that was it. I think the writing was on the wall for Magnus Paajarvi. Who do I compare that to today for the New York Rangers? If I was going to acquire Seattle Kraken player Jared McCann, I think you go Julien Gauthier because in terms of value, probably pretty similar to Magnus Paajarvi. Shows flashes of brilliance, but isn't quite there yet. The better of the Blues and Rangers second-round pick, and probably a third-round pick from next year. You tell them, don't worry about throwing in the third-round pick our way. Gauthier a second and a third, or Gauthier at a second, and you tell them to keep the third. I think it's fair for Jared McCann. And might be something that they considering how depthy they are at forward. And because they have a lot of centers coming up, they probably don't really care that much about McCann. And the Rangers, obviously, we use Jared McCann on the wing. You put him on the Strome Panarin line. If it doesn't work out there, you put him on the third line. If it doesn't work out there, you put him first line. And if it doesn't work out anywhere else, well, he's RFA with arbitration rights. You could just flip him again. I like the Jared McCann idea. He's probably the most likely trade candidate out of anyone else you're going to see on this list or anyone you saw prior. So you guys let me know what you think. Gauthier and a second for Jared McCann. Do you think yay or nay for the Rangers? Moving on to the Vancouver Canucks, we got a few players in the Vancouver Canucks. First one we're going to look at is Conor Garland, someone who surprisingly came up in trade rumors recently. Conor Garland, despite never playing a full NHL season in his career, has put up some pretty damn good numbers. He got 20 goal season with the Coyotes, 39 points, 49 games, and kind of flustered a bit this year, 26 and 43 with the Canucks. The Rangers are definitely interested in, JT Miller. I'm not big on JT Miller. I'm not a big fan of getting back with your ex-girlfriends type thing. I understand he's older, he's more mature now, but I just don't know. I don't know. I'm not big on JT Miller. I would rather get someone with a little bit more term. I know that's kind of sounds it's going to sound hypocritical considering that I have what's his name, Beau Horvath. Excuse me, on this list as well, but I'm not huge on JT Miller. I'm just not huge on him. Anyways, regardless, moving on. The 25-year-old, 5-year left, Conor Garland. Where would Conor Garland fit in with the New York Rangers? Take a wild guess. I'm not even going to say. You know where he fits in. Positive Corsi, he controls the puck, plays super hard, draws a lot of penalties. 25 years old, $4.95 million a year. You're not breaking the bank year. Here, you got him locked up for 5 more years. He fits in perfect. Contract-wise, he fits in great. Now, where does he compare? I actually picked up Kris Versteeg as someone he kind of compares to. Traded for the Toronto Maple Leafs to the Philadelphia Flyers for a first and a third round pick. Versteeg, at the time of this trade back in 2011, which was about 11 years ago, 11 years ago, was 24 years old, had term left on his deal, and was just had for a first and a third. And at the time, he had kind of similar numbers to Conor Garland in terms of projections. Like if you did the math, Garland was probably putting up these numbers that you see right here at the time of his trade. First and a third round pick, very doable. I don't know if the Canucks jump on that right away, considering they just acquired him in a relatively sizable move. Nothing too crazy, but they move things around to get him. If the Rangers trade a first and a third round pick for Conor Garland and get him, I'd be quite all right with it. I think he'd fit in great. Another Vancouver Canucks player I think the Rangers should be interested in is probably my favorite option. Brock Besser. Arbitration rights, 24 years old. Besser has had 30-goal season. Oh, where the hell did he go? 30 goals. Oh, no, he didn't. Never mind. He had 29. But either way, he's kind of playing down his value. So this is a young guy that could be had for probably relatively cheap, and he's shown flashes of being an elite goal scorer. Someone that would fit well on the Panarin or Kreider and Zibanejad line if you haven't been following along. The question is, how much does Brock Besser re-sign for? I think that's one of those things you kind of deal with in the offseason, kind of like worry about it later, win now, worry later type things. Honestly, the biggest thing for the New York Rangers going into this offseason is trying to find a way to keep or replace Ryan Strome. Brock Besser is one of those guys you could use to replace Ryan Strome because then you have 2 big names on a line and you could just get a defensively reliable forward to replace Strome as a second-line center. Regardless, Brock Besser, who do I compare him to in a trade? Getting a little bit frisky here and a little bit risky, but I'm going to say Evander Kane back in 2015. Evander Kane, big years. Then kind of trailed off a little bit. Kind of played down his value. Young at the time. This is back in 2015, so this is 7 years ago. So Evander Kane was 23, a year older than Brock Besser is now. And he was traded with Zach Bogosian for Myers, Armia, Lemieux, and a first. We're going to say Drew Stafford, probably worth a third-round pick at that time, right? 2015, probably worth a third-round pick at that time. Nothing crazy. We'll call Myers and Bogosian an even swap. Joel Armia, C+ prospect. Lemieux, C+ B- prospect. And then the first-round pick. I would bet you that Brock Besser can be had for a first, a third, probably a good B-level prospect. I know the Vancouver Canucks are big on Vitaly Kravtsov, so Kravtsov, a first, a third, and you probably have to throw in another defensive prospect. Again, I'd go back to Robertson. They might even like Tarmo Reunen because of his ability to move the puck and the fact that Vancouver is probably going to be a pretty puck-moving team. Not that Matthew Robertson can't, but if you want an offensive defenseman, you probably, or more offensive defenseman, I'm saying that he can move the puck better. Probably want Reunen over Robertson. Either way, either one of these players would work. If you throw in Kravtsov, Robertson / Reunen, a first and a third for Brock Besser, I bet you the Vancouver Canucks consider it. I bet you they do. Because why not? Because for all they know, Brock Besser might not ever reach those levels of production ever again. At least not in Vancouver. He kind of doesn't look into it. From what I understand, that they were trying to move him last year. So his name's already been out there. Could the Rangers be interested? Possibly. And again, if it doesn't work out, you could just flip him to another team. He's young, 24 years old. He's going to be 25 soon. But still a young asset. You got years of control on him. You could Sign him to a 1 year this year, sign him to a 1 year next year, let him walk. I don't really care. The fact is that you can be getting a potential elite goal scorer for cheaper than what he could be producing if he's playing at the top of his game. The last player from the Vancouver Canucks we're going to be looking at is Beau Horvath. Beau Horvath's got a year and a half left on his contract till he hits UFA. I compare him to the Keith Yandle acquisition that the Rangers made with him in that the Vancouver Canucks have young assets that can replace Beau Horvath. JT Miller, if they essentially... He takes Beau Horvath's spot. They probably re-sign him. You got other young guys coming up. You got Colson. You got Hoglander. You got young guys coming in to replace him. Same thing. Keith Yandle was kind of aging out. He only had a year and a half left until UFA in Arizona. They had young guys like OEL and who were the other guys? Rundbland at the time, who obviously didn't pan out, but David Rundbland, other young defensive prospects coming up. Not Rundbland, Gormley, Brandon Gormley. They had young guys, the guys replacing him. A year and a half left of Beau Horvath. Well, do you want that? Or because you're probably not competing for a playoff spot this year, you get Anthony Duclair on the New York Rangers right now, would probably compare to probably Phil Hedl, I would say, in terms of value. You maybe give the nod. Hedl might be a little bit more value, but we probably go Hedl. John Moore would be probably Kravtsov in terms of, well, John Moore didn't really have much value back then. If I'm building this deal, I'm probably doing Hedl, Kravtsov, and a first. And you could potentially throw in another pick there, but I'm honestly not sure. Horvath's value is really hard to assess because he's having a really down year in terms of offense. He had a down year the year before, too. Honestly, of all the players I have on here, I think Beau Horvath might be the least tasty option. I think he could fit, but I just don't think he's what the Rangers are looking for or want. You kind of build the trade out any way you want. You can give them players to win now, you give them players to win later. I just don't really see it happening. Moving on to the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, the two players I have here, I'm pretty excited about because they could be had for really cheap considering the fact that they need money to bring in Jack freaking Eichel. Jonathan Marchessault is player number one I have. I do not have trade comparables for these guys because there's no way you can draw comparisons to this just because of the way the salary cap is organized. These guys can be had for virtually nothing. Maybe not William Carlson, but Jonathan Marchessault. Marchessault's got 3 years left. He's got this year and 2 more years left at $5 million. They need to clear up that cap space to get Jack Eichel in the lineup. What could Jonathan Marchessault be had for? Probably a second or a third round pick. If they're not, at that point, trying to just dump players and get them out the damn door. Riley Smith is obviously option number one they want to get rid of. Evgeny Dadonov would be someone they might want to get rid of as well, but he's kind of scoring at a decent pace right now, so if the Rangers can make a move for Jonathan Marchessault, I'm with it. Jonathan Marchessault's first professional team was within the Rangers organization in the Hartford Wolfpack. His first professional years was with the Rangers, and they fucking let him slip as an undrafted free agent. I think he'd be an awesome fit for the Rangers right now. On the Artemi Panarin line. 2.5 years, $5 million a year. If you could have him for a second or a third round pick, why the hell not? Anything more than that, I probably would not consider it. But if he can be had for that cheap, which personally I would predict he can be had for that cheap, you make the move. Because why not? And if it doesn't work out, you could just flip him. William Carlson is probably going to be a bit harder of an acquisition. The only reason I say that William Carlson might be available because of the emergence of Chandler Stevenson. Chandler Stevenson and Jack Eichel are more likely than not going to be the 1-2 punch for the Vegas Golden Knights for the next 5 to 10 years, depending on how long Eichel and Stevenson stay there. Regardless, kind of makes William Carlson expendable, and because he's got a good amount of trade value and he's got a lot of years left, he's making $5.9 million a year. This is essentially the Rangers' replacement for Ryan Strome. This pushes Strome out the door. William Carlson, I think Carlson would fit in nice with the Rangers. William Carlson as a player has really not been producing nearly as much as he did his first year with Vegas. He's honestly playing his value down. Decent in the faceoff dot, nothing great. Good defensive forward if you look at his fancy stats. He's well over 50% in Corsi. He's well over 50% in Corsi on 5-on-5. He does pretty well for himself shorthanded. On the power play, he's a power. You put him on the power play, put him even strength, you put him where the hell you want. Either way, he's a good player. William Carlson would probably be a little bit more expensive. William Carlson, you definitely have to dig deep in your pocket. You're going to end up pulling out a first-round pick and a prospect to get William Carlson on this team. I don't think William Carlson to the Rangers is likely at all. I think the Rangers' first focus, more than anything, is to keep Ryan Strome. And I think by getting William Carlson, basically a second-line center, you're essentially telling yourself that there is no way in hell that Ryan Strome is staying. If William Carlson was a super elite player and you're getting a bona fide first line center, this kid's a stud, 100%, you make the move. But because he's kind of a second-line center, he's a good second-line center at that. I don't know. I just don't think the Rangers are trying to make lateral moves. And when I say lateral, I'm saying in terms of value, not what they offer. Because Strome and Carlson are kind of two different players. But in terms of raw value, I just think it's kind of a lateral move. Going from Strome to Carlson, I don't really think it's one the Rangers investigate too much, but something they could. I personally like William Karlsson. I wish we could keep him and Strome or have him and Strome, but just not going to happen. The last player we're going to look at is Winnipeg Jets forward Mark Scheifele. This is one I saw brought up by Dave Shapiro. Man, Mark Scheifele would look friggin' awesome on the Rangers. Now, this is an elite player that you could pick up, and he absolutely replaces Ryan Strome. This is elite. If you're gonna replace Ryan Strome, you're bringing an elite talent. You don't just give him up for nothing. You either let him walk or replace him. I'm sorry. If you're going to replace him, you replace him with someone good. And that could be a winger or a center. I want Mark Scheifele. If the Rangers are going to make one fucking let's just take a swing at this shit move, give me Mark Scheifele. Mark Scheifele, as an individual, 30 points in 37 games this year. Not great. Kind of playing his value down. 63 and 56, 73 and 71, 84 and 82, 60 and 60, 82 and 79. 5 straight years of being a point. I'm sorry. Well, maybe not this year, but 4 straight years of being a point per game player and a stud. The only thing Mark Scheifele is not great at is defensive stuff. But that doesn't really matter too much because he's a pretty damn good positive Corsi player. 5-on-5, not so much, but close. Fact of the matter is, he's an elite offensive player. If you take a look, come on. I can spell. You can spell, Nick. You got it. I love. First of all, if you don't follow JFresh, you're not doing it right. 94% even strength offense. Defense is abysmal. It is freaking awful, and you have to find someone to maybe counter that. But you put him on a line with Artemi Panarin, I promise you that even strength defense ain't gonna mean shit because they're not giving up the puck. It just ain't happening. It's not. All right. He doesn't take penalties. He passes the puck like an animal. He's good on the power play. He finishes. He does everything. He'd be perfect on the Rangers. And he's only making a little over $6 million a year for the next 2.5 years. If you're going to take a big swing, this is the guy you take a big swing at. There's nobody on the market right now, in my opinion, as just top tier fucking awesome guarantee than Mark Scheifele. And Mark Scheifele's not even really on the market. This is just if Winnipeg's like, you know what? There's got to be a culture shift. We need to do something. The only reason I could see Mark Scheifele even being a little available is to, 1, address the defense, and 2, because they have so many good young centers coming up. They've got Pierre-Luc Dubois. They've got Andrew Kopp. They've got Adam Lowry, who they just re-signed. They've got Cole Perfetti coming up. They've got, who else do they got? Who's the kid Brian Little still on this team? Really? I forgot about Brian Little. They've still got Brian Little. They've got a lot of centers. They could move one. And if they want to take a big swing and they want to fix their, what the fuck? They've only got, that's kind of crazy. They want to fix their defense or fix whatever the hell it is they think they need to fix. If they want to just accrue some damn good assets, they could do it by moving Mark Scheifele. And the Rangers have the assets to facilitate that trade. Who do I compare Mark Scheifele to in terms of making a trade? July 2014, Ryan Kessler from the Vancouver Canucks to the Anaheim Ducks. Why do I make this comparison? This trade is 8 years old. Ryan Kessler was 29 at the time, and I believe he had 3 years left on his contract. Not I believe. I know. I got to look it up. He had 3 years left on his contract at a similar cap percentage of what Scheifele has today. Vancouver, not interested in losing, but interested in moving Ryan Kessler, made the trade. B-level prospect defenseman in NHL games, Lucas Biza. 25-year-old, 49 points the year before, Nick Bonino. First-round pick, third-round pick. What do I think if the Rangers are making a trade and they're picking up Mark Scheifele? What do I think they give up? Well, I'm glad that you ask. Let's take a trip down the Winnipeg Jets train. Here we go. Good old Mark Scheifele. Where the heck are you, my friend? Here he is. Mark freaking Scheifele. If the Rangers are getting Mark Scheifele, well, you got to give them something to make them wet their lips. I think if you put in Capo Caco, and I'm just saying, if you're throwing in Capo Caco, it greatly reduces everything else that you need to give up. There are two ways you can make this trade. You trade Capo Caco. You can do it. And Zach Jones or Nils Lundqvist. And that very well could push the deal through. I think it could. Again, we're taking a look at the Winnipeg Jets defense. Teams. Winnipeg. Winnipeg does not have a single elite defender. They just have good defensemen. They got Morris, Schmidt, Pionk, Dillon, DeMello. Hanola's coming up, but these guys are replaceable. Or you can just give them another forward. I don't give a shit. Just make the deal go through. If you do Kakko and Lundqvist, I think that gets the deal through. I personally think they're going to want more win-now players. I think the Rangers are making this deal for Mark Scheifele. You're looking at Ryan Strome, probably Lindgren, definitely Nils Lundqvist because they're going to want a big asset. Definitely a first-round pick. You might have to end up moving Lindgren in this trade. I know it sucks, but you might end up having to do it. So what do we got so far? We got Hedel, Lundqvist, a first. Maybe Strome with an extension. This is a hard trade to build out. I'm not gonna lie to you. This is a hard trade to build out. I bet you they asked for Capo Caco. I bet you it looks more like this. I bet you the conversation looks more like this. And I'm not even saying Winnipeg needs wingers because they really don't. They got Wheeler, they got Wheeler, Connor, and what's his name? Where's Ehlers? There's Ehlers. And Ehlers. Who's, I think, season ended, right? He's done for the season. I don't know. I was going to use that Ryan Kessler comparison, but the Rangers don't really have a Nick Bonino comparable. Filippino's the closest thing to it, but... So you either do like Lundqvist and Kakko plus maybe something else, or you do Hedel, Lundqvist, 2 firsts, and then probably just a throw-in little piece after that. Do they have a backup goalie? Who's their backup goalie? Eric Comrie. Yeah. Is he any good? Yeah, Eric Comrie's pretty damn good. I don't know. It'd be a hard deal to figure out. But I think if the Rangers could make a deal for Mark Scheifele to go through, I definitely think it starts with Capo Caco. I think that's what they asked for. But either way, regardless, I'll let you guys build up the Mark Scheifele trade because my freaking brain is fried. I'm tired. Been staring at a computer and doing schoolwork since noon today. I want to go eat some damn dinner. You guys comment below your thoughts on all my trade hypotheticals and all my... Again, these are all super reaches. None of this is to be taken super serious, but I definitely want to hear what you guys think in these made-up scenarios in our heads that we can have fun with because we haven't seen Rangers hockey in 10 fucking days. It's been a while. You guys comment below your thoughts. I want to hear from you guys. Is there anybody I missed? Is there anybody you want to hear about? Is there anyone you think, could be an under-the-radar pickup for the Rangers? You guys comment below, let me know. And, yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love.